August 30, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-futures minis on the 2000 tick chart on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. Just look down at the descriptions below. You can see where I thought I saw setups. I've marked them out, timestamped them, as well as where I took my trades. I took only one trade, which is this squared one here. Now, overall, there was only probably two pieces of economic data that came out today that potentially could have moved the market. One came at 5:15 Pacific Standard Time, right about here. It was the ADP non-farm employment change. Then around 5:30, 15 minutes later, right about here, it was the preliminary GDP and price index quarter over quarter. Now, you could argue, maybe it created some kind of volatility, but for the most part, it didn't really seem to move the market in any one way or the other. Usually FOMC meeting days, as well as FOMC rate hike days, are the ones where you'll probably get a lot of crazy whipsaws. So I did see kind of like this is the pre-market high marked by this blue line and the pre-market low marked by this blue line, but they didn't really come into play all that much. So I didn't really quite see any particular setups except shortly after the open. And it looked like there's two legs up, one leg up, a pullback, followed by a second leg up, and then kind of a consolidation area. So overall, I would say today was kind of a trading range. So I'm going to go through the trades right now. So here's the pre-market price action. Kind of sold off and then made one push up, second push up, and right on the open, working with this bottom blue line and this top blue line as the pre-market highs and lows. At this time, I was thinking we're probably in a range. So I saw potentially one push up, pulls back, one push back, second push back, and a second push up. So the first setup I saw was potentially a fail breakout second entry short. The fail breakout, the second entry short occurs right here. You have a new low, you have a first entry short, pushes all the way back. You don't have another break below until right here. So I saw this as a potential fail breakout. Now I haven't marked it as second entry short yet because it hasn't been confirmed. So I'm waiting. Then I see the second entry short. Unfortunately, it's a good signal bar. Had I had more confidence in it, ideally this would have ticked one tick below. Then I would have confirmed the second entry short and had my order probably one tick below this guy or exactly at this guy. But this would have been not the best signal bar to go short on. And this was technically the signal bar. And when it flashed down like this and got really close to the EMA, the trade was already pretty much made at that point. So I did not want to chase this and put it like one tick below here because you might be running into the EMA. Right now, bias does seem like it's in a trading range, but it did, potentially could bounce off the EMA. So unfortunately, this setup just was almost there, but not quite. Prices continue chopping, it kind of pushes up to the pre-market highs again, comes back down. At this point, I was playing with the idea during this time of day is like potentially this might be a trading channel like this, and this is a breakout, but it kind of bounced off, and I thought, okay, well, there's a potential support right here. So I had this red trend line going as well, and I wasn't really sure where the top of the trend line was, and the top kind of was drawn in later, and then I made it into a legitimate trade channel. So I see this, and I see a second bounce. So I have more belief and faith that this is actually a support, this trend line support. And early on, I did have this thinking it was kind of closer to this, or even down here with a potential overshoot, but I did like it roughly about here. And I kind of like that the top of the trend channel touched twice, and then the bottom has confirmed 3 times now. And at this point, I kind of abandoned the idea that this is a channel that was even relevant. So I did delete it at one point. But then prices continue to move. I see a failed second entry short setting up because there's a new low here. It's a first entry short, pulls back. It's about to create a second entry short. So I saw this when it came down and moved right back up. I thought I saw potentially a second entry short that failed because you have a new low here. First entry short pulls up, comes back down. It doesn't break below, but it pulls back up. So it's like a second entry short that tried to make it, but then it failed. But it's a little not as clear and clean as I'd like. So I saw it as a second entry short that failed. And there's like enough room to the top of this pre-market to go long. But again, this setup isn't 100% clean. So I decided, EMA is turning up. So it has that going for it. So I just wasn't sure if the read was correct. So I had to skip it. I said, well, if there's a a higher low, then I would probably take it. So then I had to wait. Prices continue chopping up. You technically get a higher low right here, but it's already kind of close to the top of this pre-market. So I wasn't sure if this is actually still in a trading range day, even though it's a bullish bias. There's nothing that says prices can come crashing back down. So after this close, I wasn't 100% sure. I also noticed that it couldn't break past this line right here. So it's a little bit, I was a little reluctant to take this trade because the next high would be right here. There's not enough room to get a good clean scalp. But then prices continue moving up. I see a shortened trend channel moving up here. I don't see any good entries. It comes up, touches the top of the red channel, and I like this red channel now. I'm more and more convinced that we're operating in this channel now because it had one touch, two touch, three touch. And on the top side, you could count this as a touch, but you definitely have a touch here and a touch here. So potentially three touches on the top, three touches on the bottom. You have yourself a good channel. Prices continue moving. Technically, you have a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. The second entry long is a pretty bad signal bar, but I looked at it in hindsight. It might have been worth the risk because this is a very small candle to take a risk off of. It's only about 4 ticks, so 1 point. So it might have been worth it, but to me, had it only closed a little bit more bullish, or just, it wasn't red but closed green, I probably would have tried to jump on that trade. So then prices look like they're kind of ranging. I also saw a potential high or kind of completion of a measured move. I saw this one leg up. It's a pullback, two legs try to go back down. So one leg up here, two attempts to come back down, then another leg up here, which completed the measured move, which is this line here and this potential resistance here. I see a lower high here. So I actually saw a new low, first entry short, second entry short. The count kind of looks like it resets. It was like first entry short, and then you don't quite get a second entry short, but you get a lower high. And this lower high, I thought, well, it is a lower high. There might be a potential trade here because it's off close to the low of this trading range. But the EMA, it closed below the EMA, but the EMA is still kind of like drifting up and it's starting to flatten out. So I thought, it's coming from an overshoot here. So there's a potential overshoot here and only kind of pulled up once. So it gave me a little bit of conflicting ideas. The other thing was that it completed this measured move. And it looked like it tried to push up, and now it actually might make one attempt down, pulls up, and I'm thinking there might be a second leg down. But as you can see, just me talking through this, I feel like there's one way or the other. So there's like conflicting, I guess, competing narratives of whether you should go long or short. So I decided, well, I can't really tell because I'm also at the low of this range. So I'd be selling into the lows if I wanted to, believe this lower high. So I had to just kind of let it go because again, I'm not sure. So I just had to let it go. It wasn't the cleanest setup and it looked like it would have worked, but I didn't feel too bad about it because I wasn't sure. Prices continue moving down, falls into this shortened trend channel going down. I don't see any clean entries, but had you been more confident and believed the rejection of the EMA, this would have been a beautiful trade. And if you had a runner, looks like you, depending on how you manage it, you would have gotten probably a decent runner for a few points. Prices then come down, falls into this trading channel going up. There was a break here. I see a second entry long here. It's a new high. It's a first entry long, pulls back. Technically, the second entry long hasn't been made yet, but it's the break of this channel, and it already made one push up. So I was thinking there's a potential for a second push up, but I didn't like that this is an inside bar. So I wanted to wait, pass up this trade, and wait for a higher low confirmation before going long. And as you can see, it kind of comes back down. I'm thinking there might be a higher low here. For here, definitely you have a higher low. And I actually tried to enter this. I waited for this candle to close. And I said, okay, definitely we have a higher low now. It looks like EMA is reacting and acting as a support. And it did close above the EMA. All things going for it. Also looks like a visual, because technically you have a second entry long here, but visually look like a one push down. Looks like a one push up, first entry long. And now it looks like it's getting ready for a second entry long. So I actually put my entry one tick above this original signal bar. And you can tell right at the open, it opened right where my entry was, but I did not get picked up. So I missed this trade. So it's a trade I actually tried to take. I missed the trade because I also like that there's enough room for a quick scalp to the top. And unfortunately, the trade, just kind of would have probably given me my scalp here, come down, and I would have kept my stop loss one tick below here because this is actually a 2 point. This is actually 2 points, this candle. So it's a 6 tick risk because I would have kept, one entry, one tick above and then one tick below. And as you can see, it would have given me a little bit of nervous jitters, but it wouldn't have stopped me out. And it was a calculated risk that would have worked had this candle actually just came down and picked me up though. So unfortunately, I missed that trade. Continues moving up. I don't have this yellow channel yet. I do draw this as a supporting trend line. And I also was wondering if there's a supporting resistance, not a support, but a resistance channel up here. So I wasn't 100% sure. I did have this loosely drawn because at one time I was also debating whether it was kind of a spike and potentially a channel here because it looked like it fit a little cleaner this way and a little bit cleaner like this, or even a little bit lower. But I wasn't 100% sure. And when I've had this overshoot, I was thinking, okay, maybe there's this potential trend line here on this bottom one. I did see a new low here, first entry short, technically a second entry short. Second entry short hasn't failed yet, but I wouldn't go short here because it just feels a little congested. And it confirms the second entry short. That's okay. I didn't see a really good clean setup to even try to take a trade here. So it is bouncing off the EMA again, but it did have a violation here. So this is just something I marked, but I didn't realistically think there was a clean, safe trade here. Even though there was enough room to make it to the highs, and the prices continue moving down. I see a new high here, first entry long. You don't get a second entry long. And this is actually where I take my first and actually only trade. So I did have this trend line here now, and when it touched here and moved up, I confirmed it and I said, okay, this is obviously a clear supporting trend line. I saw this, I saw as a first entry short, pulls back, a second entry short. However, this is a terrible signal bar to go short on. So I was actually thinking reverse. I actually like that this is a failed second entry short. Again, it kind of confirmed on this candle up. So when the life of this candle, I was thinking right here at this line 45, 20, 50, there are likely a lot of traders with stop losses here that might have decided to go short early on, or potentially buyers that are thinking if it breaks through here, it's gonna flash up. It's getting close to this midline. So what I did was I actually entered one tick, actually at the top of this candle, anticipating a second entry short that fails. So I actually waited. It broke up above just by one tick, came back down, chopped for a little bit, and I dropped my order in. It filled me right at the close, which is right here. Now I was willing to take this risk because this is also a 2 point risk. Actually, it's 2.5 points because you have one tick above, one tick below. I was willing to take that risk because I saw it was breaking through this support. They're making higher lows every time. It's not a full-on confirmed correction yet, but I'm believing prices are starting to slowly move back. It looks like it wants to break out of this pre-market trading range. I'm just seeing all this, whether it's completely valid or not. This is how I was reading the chart at the time. I decided to take the risk. It flashes up, and since it was a 2 point risk, from here down to here is 2 points, I wanted a 2 point reward. So actually from here, I entered at 45, 20, 50. I got out at 45, 22, 50 right here. So I was going for 1-to-1 risk reward because I was taking a risk. Usually I only go for 1 point, which would have gotten me out right here. But I said, you know what? It's going to push probably up, if it breaks through here, it might have enough momentum to flash up and take my trade. So that's what I did. It turned out to work. Now, as I said, whether that was a actual validly red entry or not, it's debatable, but that's how I saw it. Prices continue moving up. It looks like it consolidates here, makes a new high here, first entry long, pulls back. It's setting up for a second entry long. This candle kind of moved. And here, when the second entry long was confirmed, this was, when I saw it, I thought, okay, it's a good signal bar. It closed above the EMA just barely, but I didn't like that it's an inside bar, and I wanted to wait for lower high confirmation. You get a lower high right here. So this lower high, yes, it's confirming the second entry long. It came from overshoot, so it might push back to the other side. The thing I don't like about this is it's a lower high off a red candle. So you don't necessarily know you have a lower high yet because the next candle, if it prints and flashes below this, then technically that would be your lower high. So I was waiting and watching. When this one closed, then you have a confirmed lower high, but I just didn't like the setup, so I had to leave it alone. I also saw a failed second entry short here, new low here, first entry short, second entry short. Technically, the second entry short has not failed yet, but it seemed like it was having trouble pushing through the top here. So I wanted to see, right here, if you counted this as a failure, I would think it's a little premature because it's an inside bar. So technically, you still just have a first entry short, second entry short. It technically hasn't failed yet because you don't have enough price action to confirm and say it failed. So I definitely had to leave it alone. On top of that, the EMA is holding, which has that going for it. I did draw the shortened trend channel going up, but right now it also feels congested to try to take a long. And if you take a long, you're kind of pushing up against here. There's enough room to scalp out, but all these things coming into play just kind of made me sit back and watch. And as you see, this one would have flashed up. If you took the trade, it would have worked out great. But in real time, you have no idea what's going to happen here. And then this flashing up, I think would have just been a lucky entry on my part if I just took that trade. Prices then continue moving up. It looks like it's inside this channel, then it breaks out. Technically have a new high here, first entry long. That's all you get. Prices continue moving down. You technically have a new high, first entry long, second entry long, but this is an ugly signal bar. And then you could say, well, maybe it's a second entry long failure, but it doesn't fail on this candle, and then finally does here. But then you're running into this ascending yellow channel now. So, you certainly wouldn't want to go short, and then it feels risky to go long. Pops around, it looks like it's in this trading range. I see a second entry short setting up. This is a new low, first entry short. Now setting up, here's the second entry short. Now the second entry short, it was going back and forth as I was watching it and also as I came back to it. I don't like that this signal bar is too neutral. Also the second entry short, even though the EMA is flattening, it didn't push all the way up to the top. I wanted to kind of push to the top and then reject back down. So when I saw this, I was thinking there's a possibility of prices bouncing off the EMA, even though EMA is flat and it doesn't matter as much in a trading range. The EMA is also coinciding with the midline of this range. So my concern was it'd push back up to try to achieve the top here and potentially move back into this breakout of this larger channel. But I wasn't 100% sure, so I had to leave it alone. Looks like if you did take a short, it would have worked out pretty well. And I was thinking if something had set up like a higher low or a lower high, then it would have been more confident taking a short here. Unfortunately, you don't get any kind of setup like that. By the time you get a higher low, it's like way down here, but that's clearly separated and far away from the setup that you were originally looking at. Then prices continue chopping. I don't have this peach channel drawn yet. I do have a trend line from here to here because originally there was a trend line that was drawn from here to here. And I saw this big violation, this big move up, and I ended up adjusting it to here. And then when this kind of formed, I made it into a channel. I thought, okay, one touch, two touch, one touch. It's you can argue for it to be a third touch here. And I actually saw this setup, and I thought it was actually a fantastic setup. Unfortunately, by the time I came over, the chart looked like that. And I look back and I go, oh, I wasn't at my desk. I didn't take this trade as it formed. This is why I thought it was a pretty good trade right here. You have a new low that was formed, made one push down, it pulls back up, makes a second push down. So actually you have a new high here, one push up, second push up, but it fails. It fails below the EMA on a second entry long, which is what we like. It creates a second entry short, also forms below the EMA, which is also what we like. It's touching here on this potential downtrend. So you have two key entries, a failed second entry long and a second entry short. Those are two. Then you have a potential downward trend, three. But if this third one isn't strong enough, you do have the EMA rejecting. So that is a fourth key entry point. On top of that, it's a pretty decent signal bar, enough room to the EMA. Had I seen this in real time, I'm fairly confident I would have probably jumped on this trade and I would have jumped on it probably one tick below here instead of the lows here. I would probably taken at 45.1775. And as you can see, not only would it have filled you on that same candle, it would have given you your profit target. Even if you went for 2 points or 3 points, it would have gotten it. But on this one, I probably would have just pushed it for about 1 point. I'm not sure about 2 points because my concern would be running into this pre-market high. But as we can see throughout the day, the pre-market high wasn't really respected all that much, except for early on. But it was still there that gave me pause. So this looks like a trade that would have worked, and I think I would have taken it. Actually, I was pretty confident I would have taken it had I been, present at my desk. Then prices continue moving up, falls into this trading range. I see a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. This is a terrible signal bar, so I don't think there's a trade here. It's also doji. Prices move up. It looks like it falls into this channel, comes back down. Things look a little congested. You technically have a new high here, first entry long. You don't have a second entry long till you get to about here. I don't like this second entry long because even though it's a good signal bar, it's an inside bar and it closed below the EMA. You could argue that EMA is flattening out, but it's just another little thing that I just didn't like. It didn't have enough power to push up. And then when it did push up, I'm thinking, okay, now you have a failed second entry long. But by the time you have a confirmed failed second entry long as it's bouncing, you don't really have enough room to get to the bottom. So you would have to have taken it on this next candle that yet has to form, maybe one tick below. Looks like you would have gotten filled, but depending on how you traded it, you would have to sit through this and you may or may not have gotten your scalp here. If you waited too long, and if you kind of kept it one tick above your entry, which is up here, you likely would have gotten stopped out here. And then going back though, I also saw this as a new low, first entry short, second entry short, but again, the second entry short and a lower high. It looks like it's not the best signal bar for the second entry short. Lower high, it feels a little iffy, because yes, you do have a lower high, but it looks like it's, first entry long, second entry long, it failed and has a lower high. So you're thinking of going short, but you're running into the potential bottom support here. So it's just a little confusing for me. So I just thought, okay, well, I'm just going to sit out and not potentially take that trade. Then it starts going into the last 30 minutes of the day. You could argue you have a new high here, first entry long, second entry long, but this is a good second entry long signal bar. You could consider it as a failed breakout. Unfortunately, it's kind of far from the EMA, which that means you have enough room to scalp in. It has overshoot here and overshoot here. If you took a trade here, I could see probably why, but it's also, with only 7 minutes left, because at 12:53, and there's only 7 minutes left of the regular trading hours, it's just, at this setup at a different time, different context, I think I might have taken it or considered taking it, but I just don't like this first entry long, second entry long. You'll be banking on the failed breakout being stronger than, the momentum and push down, because it is a second entry long and you're considering the EMA, even though it's starting to trend down, you're going to neglect it. Looks like you would have gotten filled, and then this probably would have stopped you out. So it's kind of a little tricky right here. Plus, it's already too late in the day to try to take that trade. And prices kind of go into the close. Now, the thing I noticed about lately the trading is the last 10 minutes has also slowed down. Overall volatility today was a little bit low. So there wasn't too many setups that I thought were worthwhile to take, except for probably this one. This one was probably one of the better trades. Unfortunately, I missed it. And then the one trade that I did take, it was kind of a more of an interpretation, because I was banking on having a lot of traders having their stops one tick above here, this guy here. So this one was a little bit more interpretive, a little bit more on my intuition. Not as much, I mean, there is still the second entry short failure. So it is a little riskier though, because you're already pushing up against the top. But overall, as I said, the price action again was a little slow. Things are kind of slow. This is the last couple of days of the month of August for trading. And it looked like things kind of just fell into this big consolidation trading range. It's about a 32-point trading range. So ideally, in the next couple of months, things should pick up. We should hopefully get better and easier trading. So hopefully that was helpful.